it might not be all that big news for our US audience or people from further afield, but in Britain we had a budget yesterday, so that's big news. It's sort of something we're obliged to cover, being in the UK. So just going to talk a bit about the budget that happened. I don't want to go into actually fantastic amounts of detail, just because it is a bit dry.
Mm-hmm.
Like raise a twiddle with a 0.5% here or there, or a penny more or less on certain things. But just to talk about our general economy and the government and all that sort of thing. So our Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rachel Reeves, is a stupid person. I think a lot of Americans and Brits are familiar with that, having a very, very senior politicians, like Kamala or Joe, being sort of undeniably slow people, not towering intellects, or not even close, right? And she's unfortunately she's one of those, and she's in charge of our economy.
She's also just a PPE, or politics, philosophy and economics graduate. I don't think that is enough qualification to run the economy. Not that a politician should do that anyway, in my opinion.
Yeah, she's just a party favourite. They obviously wanted to put a woman in that role. I think, is she the first ever female Chancellor of the Exchequer? I think she might.
Yes, she took great delight in saying that. And it's also worth mentioning as well that there was a recent sort of scandal, if you will, where she replaced a portrait in her office with the female leader of the Communist Party. Is that right?
Yeah, I don't think she was the leader, but she was
Founders. Okay.
I think wasn't she also a member of the Eugenics Society back in the day? Ed Dutton was very excited about this. He thought it confirmed all of his theories of woke eugenics. Maybe it does.
Maybe, yeah.
A woman called Ellen Wilkinson, who was in the government in the 30s and during the war, in the 20s, out of favour, I think, during the 30s, and during the Churchill administration. And she was just an out-and-out socialist. She definitely was a member of the British Communist Party, completely unapologetically as well, supported the Great Strike of the 20s. It was just an absolute red. So when Rachel Reeves got into power, she changed one of the portraits in 11 Downing Street, that's where our Chancellor of the Exchequer lives, with a picture of Red Ellen. And it sort of speaks volumes, doesn't it? It tells you everything you need to know about this person. She just lionises some commie woman from way back when.
To be fair, though, to go back onto Dutton's theories for a moment, perhaps by crashing the economy with this budget, they are hoping to kill off the bottom 10% of useless eaters in this country. So perhaps there is a eugenics element to this.
Klaus might be happy.
Yeah, it was one of the things Mao said when he was told that, after being told for a long time there weren't any famines during the Great Leap Forward, being told actually there is widespread famine and probably hundreds of thousands, maybe millions, it turned out to be unknown millions, are dying. And he just said, oh, well, we've got 10 fingers. If you cut off one finger, you're still all right, aren't you? You've still got 9 fingers left.
That's a rational and reasonable way of looking at things. Moral as well.
You wouldn't be able to play guitar after that, would you?
Well, if you take off the pinky finger of your picking hand, you should be all right.
That's true, I suppose, yeah.
It wouldn't help with piano.
That's true.
Certainly. Anyway, so we've got just an out-and-out communist, if not communist sympathiser, running our economy. And she's decided that they're going to increase tax to the tune of 40 billion. That's the takeaway headline, is that they're just going to tax us harder. We're already a poor country. I remember Callum, during his last weeks, did a segment all about just how rich we are in real terms compared to how rich we used to be, and compared to other sort of big, supposed to be industrial economies, advanced economies, like the United States, France, Germany, Japan, whatever. And we're super poor. We've got really low wages, low productivity. That is what our economy is. And we have been rinsed by our taxes pretty hard in the last generation or two, and they're just going to raise them more to the tune of 40 billion.
Well,
and we know it's largely to build houses and to support the people that have invaded us illegally and legally.
I think before the Labour government came in, it was about 45% of all money went via the government. I wonder how much more. We're halfway to full communism.
So looking into it, this budget, about a little over half of that, I would assume, £22 billion is going straight to health and social care. So that will immediately be eaten up by the useless NHS. Which as well has a budget increase up to £181.4 billion this year.
Increase, that's an increase of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Mad.
So it's all going to go to the people at the top, of course, because they're the ones that hoover up a lot of the money, and it's not going to go towards, oh yeah, we're just going to spend this on hiring doctors. It's not going to happen, is it? It's going to disappear into the void.
Yeah. So the thing is, I mean, I've got some libertarian leanings. That's about as far as I'm prepared to go with that.
Good enough for me.
I would say I've got some sympathies with some libertarian ideas, but I am a statist. I'm not nowhere near really a complete libertarian.
Nobody's perfect.
However, I do think that nearly all I'll say this, nearly all taxes are state-sponsored theft, in my opinion.
Yes.
Nearly all. I mean, if there was none, I think it's very difficult to imagine a world where there's truly no state. Anyway. Some hardline libertarians will be going crazy.
I'm not an anarchist, by the way.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Anyways, let's not go down that rabbit hole. But I would say taxing people more than a few percent on things is crazy. Let alone having income tax of 23, 25, 40%. These sorts of numbers. That's crazy. That's crazy. People have never been taxed that much in all of human history.
Well, who is most of that tax going to support? I used the phrase useless eaters a moment ago, but I think the vast majority of the useless eaters in British society are the Jobsworth bureaucrats that make up Whitehall. So a lot of this money will be going to funding them acting as fifth columnists, treasonous traitors, destroying the country.
Yeah. Billions and billions going straight to foreign countries, billions and billions going to house migrants, all sorts of stuff.
Didn't they announce also that there was going to be a new commitment to funding Ukraine that was going to go on
for
as long as possible?
Yeah,
as long as it takes.
As long as it takes, which is the line that has come out of the State Department and the Pentagon and that we're now saying and giving all our money to. Okay,
Thanks, guys.
fine. Great. A lot of it is tinkering around, the Blairites sort of tinkering around, Brownite tinkering around with things. There's nothing, fantastically giant where they're going to sort of rework the nature of the economy and stuff, perhaps with the exception of green policies. So, for example, just freezes on quite a lot of things. Tinkering a little bit with capital gains tax.
Of course, it's worth mentioning as well that the freeze is still significant because of inflation being at record levels, more or less, very, very high inflation. That by freezing it, it's still effectively increasing tax, even though the threshold has stayed the same, because you need more money.
Great point. I must tip my fedora ever so slightly. Sorry to do this.
That's all right.
But, not really anywhere near record levels. But still, nonetheless. Sorry, because I know
in my lifetime.
Right. Okay. The only reason I even do that is because there will be people in the comments saying, "Oh, it's nowhere near record levels." But anyway,
I appreciate a fedora tip. Don't worry.
But still, inflation is pretty bad, and I always find it annoying in recent years when they seem to be bragging that it's come down from 6 or 7%. It's only 2% now, or something, or it's only 3%.
There shouldn't be any.
Oh,
in my
right,
opinion.
yeah. Oh, it's only getting worse. It's only getting worse a bit more slowly. Oh, okay.
It's like I've only filled up your house 2% of the way with excrement.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, well, that's very charitable of you. Thank you.
Yeah. You're going to drown ever so slightly more slowly now. Great. Okay. So what were some of the things? Again, I don't want to bore people with like 1p off of booze.
That was actually quite interesting because they're just like, one good thing, we've knocked a penny off of a pint in pubs, and of course all of the additional taxes mean it's still going to be more expensive anyway.
There was an incredibly condescending poster that came with that said, "We've knocked 1 pence off of pints at pubs. This means your pints will be," big bold letters, "cheaper."
But it was 1 pence.
Yeah.
So how many pints do you have to sink before you've made a saving of another pint?
Somebody calculated something like 6,000, 600 to 6,000.
I'm willing to try.
And they, and you go to in Britain, if anyone's actually lives in Britain and knows and ever goes out for a drink, the amount you're charged for a drink in a pub wildly varies from place to place. Wildly. You go into London and you can easily pay £6, £7, £8, £9 for a pint, or a rum and coke or something. You come out to sort of rural Wiltshire and it's like 50p. Not quite, that's an exaggeration. But it's like...
There's nowhere near that.
Yeah, I know. But still, you don't get much change out of a tenner for a drink in London, and you can buy 3 drinks for that here. Right, so...
I think one of the most notable things...
The state taking 1p less is just... It's nothing. Sorry,
Harry. That's about almost $12 for a £9 pint, by the way, if you're American. Sorry.
I was going to say, the thing that I've noticed so far, looking at all of the information that's on the screen for us, is that everything's going up.
That's frozen or going up. Yeah.
Either frozen or going up, or discounts being reduced to a lower discount. So that's the primary takeaway, is that things will get more expensive because the government is either taking more or giving you less of a discount.
There's just loads of things here which are just unpopular with the vast majority of people. I mean, for example, they're committed to the HS2 thing.
What use is that going to be if no one can afford to take it? High-speed rail that no one can afford.
Rail prices in this country are absolutely ridiculous.
Well, that's another thing. They said that's going up.
Yeah.
The cap on buses is going up, and the amount that you're actually being charged for fares
Let's be honest,
is
gentlemen.
going up.
If this country was actually dedicated to try and reducing carbon emissions, it would do anything that it can to make public transport, that being mass services of transport where you don't have to each individually take a car, you can all just pack into a train and get the train at the same time, better run and cheaper. Because if you've got less cars on the road, that's less emissions out in the air. That's not what they do. They go out of their way to make it more expensive and less attainable for people to just get the train. It shouldn't cost over £100 to get the train from the north of England to London.
No, it shouldn't.
No, it shouldn't cost £50. It should cost a tenner.
Do you know that even now, the train from Swindon to London, which is sometimes 50 minutes, costs up to £60 if you're getting a return ticket, which is just ridiculous.
Well, the other day, or a couple of weeks ago, I went to Nottingham from Swindon. Not very far. Is that 100 miles? Is that even less than that?
It's around the Midlands.
Something in that ballpark. So from the West Country to the Midlands, return 136 quid. It's ridiculous. You could actually fly to Istanbul and back for that, and have money left over.
Well, you can fly to Scotland sometimes from the south to like Edinburgh or Glasgow for 20 quid sometimes.
I did see a story the other day. This girl flew to, I think it was Mallorca or Barcelona. She wanted to go from somewhere in the south to somewhere in the north of England, and it was cheaper to fly to the Mediterranean and back. It was cheaper, so she did.
Probably
mental.
Probably a much better service as well.
Yeah, probably actually enjoyed it. Yeah, probably didn't have to put up with like rugby lads chanting.
And probably faster.
Okay, yeah, so one of the things that struck me, is sort of zooming out a bit, broadly speaking, is that there is some ideology, a fair bit of ideology in this. The idea that commies and leftists just really, really resent successful or rich people. I don't want to go to bat for the super wealthy particularly. I'm a working class lad.
A lot of them support this kind of thing.
But
anyway.
I'm not ideologically in favour of just trying to hurt rich people. Because they bring in, if they own businesses and things, they bring in jobs and they make the economy go round and all sorts of things. But yeah, there's the idea that doing away with the nom-dom status quo. So, in other words, just really rich people will be less likely to want to live here or have a house here. Stuff on private jets. I mean, there's very few private jets still. They're attacking them anyway. Private schools.
That was particularly nasty. Because if you've got lots of money, about the most responsible way you could possibly spend that money is making sure that your children have a good education. And I think that you should be able to pay for better service. I think that's perfectly reasonable. And dragging down rich people's children to the level of state school, I don't think is fair. And I went to a state school.
Well, the whole point of communism, socialism, progressivism is flattening of all standards to the lowest common denominator.
So on private schools, they're going to lose their business rate relief and will pay 20% VAT, value-added tax, on their fees as of next year. I've always thought that some things that the left do, or the Labour Party in Britain, the attack on hereditary peerage, the attack on private schools, these things are something I have never and will never benefit from, right? And yet I've always found it just pure resentment.
Well, yeah,
it's just pure resentment.
If you were seething with envy at the idea that other people are born into more successful families than you are, then you would take this as a win, even if it doesn't materially benefit you, or in fact potentially makes you worse off in some way. At least in terms of the state of the governance of the country, it affects all of us one way or another. And everything that these people do, I think, should be qualified by the fact that I don't believe that the Labour government that we are run by have souls. Keir Starmer is not a man with an internal life. He does not have a soul. He does not read or enjoy books. He does not listen to or enjoy music. He does not have a favourite film. This man has no interests outside of managerial, bureaucratic head counting.
And our private schools, what we call public schools, which is confusing to everyone else who isn't British, our private schools, let's call them, at least used to be, the envy of the world. If you was a super rich, if you was the Sultan of Brunei and you could send one of your kids to Harrow or Eton, you would, because you're guaranteed an absolutely first class education. Labour just hate it. So anyway, minimum wage. So a lot of it is politics. No wonder she put a card carrying commie on her wall. I mean, raising minimum wage. I mean, everyone knows that that's not a great idea. It just hurt. Well, anyway, there's loads and loads of examples of where it's just weird and they're just wringing money out. It's just commies wringing money out of us whilst collapsing us at the same time.
Raising minimum wage when you're raising everything else is just an arms race. That's all it is. We raise taxes, so we raise minimum wage, and then we're paying too much for the people's minimum wages, so we need to raise the taxes, and it all just ends up collapsing middle and small businesses.
It's like having a giant welfare state and open borders. Those two things together are disastrous, obviously disastrous. So yeah, I mean, we're still going to give loads of money directly to just foreign countries just for the sake of it, just because of white guilt or something. I don't know what. Yeah, there's lots there, but I suppose a lot of it is kind of boring. And I suppose the main thing to say, there was actually quite a good article I saw on
let's look
Unheard.
at this one at the bottom. Rachel Reeves will also raise the windfall tax on North Sea oil and gas producers from 35 to 38%.
Right.
So energy's going to be more expensive.
Thank you.
Because they also hate energy. They also want to spend any wealth we've got left on sort of wind farms and things that don't really work because Ed Miliband.
It's not just that it'll make it more expensive for the consumer, it'll make it less desirable to even continue those businesses.
Also, it has a knock-on effect to all other industry as well, because all industries use energy to some extent.
I want to talk briefly, if I can, quickly, about an article that was in Unheard, of all places, but I thought there's a few good lines in it. And again, it's just sort of the more zoomed out, broader view of our economy. It's actually really quite bad. It's actually quite bad. So they said, Britain's cloud of misery assumes concrete form in provincial high streets of unmitigated gloom, whose shuttered shops are punctuated by vape outlets, phone repairers, and cash-only barbers.
They've been reading my tweets. Whoever wrote this,
whose dubious legality are left unexamined by a state desperate for whatever revenue it can take. Indeed, even Oxford Street is now just another dismal provincial high street. Our ruling class's economic model is one so committed to low-wage employment over investment that Conservative government imported almost 4% of the country's population in the last 2 years just to man checkout tools and deliver food on bicycles. Juicing gross GDP figures from what has aptly been termed human quantitative easing. I've not heard that before, but I thought that was a good line.
Heard that banded around a few times, yeah.
Even as the resulting exactions on housing, infrastructure and societal stability fray what is left of Britain's social contract. The very social contract is falling apart, where people are saying, what? The state is just robbing us and replacing us. Wow. You know, it's sort of at that level. A bit further down, they said this: overburdened with unaffordable commitments, with a declining tax base, the British state lurches from crisis to crisis, getting weaker, poorer, and less capable at every turn. This, by the way, the very definition of societal collapse. The economic situation is so dire that tinkering with tax rates offers no meaningful solution. British politicians should instead think of the country in explicitly developmentalist terms. Recreating the essential infrastructure, transport links, low-cost energy, the manufacture of basic goods like primary steel. We haven't really got a steel industry anymore, barely. Necessary to permit a functioning first-world economy some decades to come. They mentioned also that as much as 43% of people in this country don't pay any income tax because they don't earn enough. There's a threshold. I can't remember exactly what the threshold is.
Last I remember, it was £12,500.
Right. So
I think it was raised recently. I might be misremembering.
So if you earn less than that, you don't have to pay any income tax, and that's 43% of the of the working people.
And if you're here illegally and
That's
taking
mad.
money cash in hand that you don't declare, well, then you're not paying any tax on that either, are you?
You run a barber's where there's never any customers in there,
So it was raised.
but own a first-class, brilliant Mercedes.
It was
And it's so go on.
it was raised to 12,570.
Right.
Oh, well, it bumped up 70 quid. Cheers.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
I didn't do it.
I wasn't saying cheers to you, although you are Tony Blair today, so I will still blame all of this on you.
And in that Unheard article, they end by sort of making the point that the state itself is losing legitimacy. I mean, look at Rachel Reeves. Look at how smug she is.
Oh, that's such an annoying.
I'm Chancellor of the Exchequer. I'm rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. Sort of she's a moron. If anyone's ever heard her speak,
Oh yeah.
God, it's so frustrating.
It's like the final boss of HR managers.
Yeah, an idiot girl boss that thinks she's something special. It's mad. And the last few links, if I leave it to you, Samson, if you flash up a few of the links, the BBC.
In that one.
Yeah, it's a dodgy barnet. It's bad for a bald guy to call other people out on their haircut, but I
think that's fair enough,
that's
though.
a dodgy barnet. What was it? The BBC said, all working people are getting hit hard by this. Sky News said all middle earners are being hit hard by this. The Financial Times said all businesses and wealthy people bear the brunt of this. No one's happy with it.
So everybody's worse off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
Of course they are.
I mean, it just seems that Starmer's government, from every possible angle of attack, is just destroying our country as quickly as possible. That really is what it feels like living here.
And it's important to point out that yesterday I covered the news that came out regarding Axel Rudikapana, the Southport killer, as well. And it does seem that, along with that being timed to make sure it avoided the Tommy Robinson rally over the weekend, that it seems to have been timed to coincide with this budget announcement as well. And I can only think that the government, if they were trying to act pragmatically, were hoping that if they release two infuriating bits of news at the exact same time, that somehow the anger for both of them would be dispersed and cancel each other out, because people would be too unfocused to be angry about both at the same time. No, that was a complete mistake. Everybody's furious about everything that you have done. Everybody involved in this government needs to step down, they need to resign, then they need to hand themselves in for conviction of treason charges.
I hope you appreciated that segment from the podcast The Lotus Eaters, and if you want to see what else we're doing, you can follow Connor's series, Tomlinson Talks. Here he talks about how hope not hate might have broken the law. And if you want to see what else we're putting out, you can always follow us on Twitter. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.